Hello everyone, this is RC0538 again, and today I'm going to be bringing you a starter deck. This time though, we're going to be doing Blue 4 and we're going to be using the Commonwealth. Now, as you can see, compared to our Red 4 deck, we have a lot more options when it comes to coalitions and countries. We're going to be picking the Commonwealth, which consists of the United Kingdom, Canada, as well as the ANZAC. ANZAC is basically a combination of Australia and New Zealand. Now, type, I didn't really get into this last time. These are different specializations you can pick for your deck. Motorized is going to have a lot of lighter infantry and heavy infantry. Just all depends on the makeup that you choose, but they're all going to be coming in wheeled vehicles. Armored decks are going to focus on heavy infantry with IFVs, as well as having heavy tank support. That's what armored is. It's basically just tanks. Support, I wouldn't recommend this. It's artillery and logistics. You have Marines, which is, you guessed it, specializes in Navy, and it has a couple more interesting things about it. It's limited in some regards, but it's better in others. Like, it has more infantry, but only the Marine infantry mostly. It's also got more airplanes, but only airplanes that are available to a Marine unit. That's all in Navy. It has more naval slots. Mechanized is a lot of infantry and a lot of vehicles. That's what mechanized is. Airborne, a lot of helicopter-borne infantry, a lot of helicopters, and lots of airplanes. So that's all of this, but you can select all. This is what I'd recommend for basically most situations, barring 10v10s. And then era, I wouldn't recommend doing this, because we're going to want to have all our options available to us for this deck. Okay, so once again, we've loaded in. However, compared to our Soviet beginner deck, you can see that we have 55 as compared to 60, which the Soviet deck had. And that's because we're playing a coalition, and so while we have more options, Eugen has balanced that by giving you less points to spend. I, for one, think it's a good balancing system. I like the idea. However, you've got that also to think about when you're doing when you're choosing, do you want to be a coalition, do you want to be a nation, or do you want to be the whole faction? So, start with the logistics. Once again, I recommend the the logistics Jeep. For this, we're going to be going with one of the Iltis CPs. We're not going to go for the M38A1, for instance, and that's only because it has a lower off-road speed. However, with this, we get 110 off-road speed, and we get 6 command units. Now, I didn't really touch on this last time, but we also have command infantry. Command infantry is basically just a stealthy CV. If you turn these weapons off and you bring them in a chopper, they're very mobile, they're very quick, and they're also very stealthy because they are infantry, so it makes them harder to spot. We have some other CV options. There's, like, for example, this Warrior. I wouldn't recommend it because it's auto-cannon, give it away. The Sultan is also interesting because it's got a lot of armor on it. Chieftain has a lot of armor for a command tank. Once again, all of this really just depends on your playstyle, what you want. It's all up to you. And Wargame, that's a nice thing. That's what I really love about Wargame, is there's so much variety and so much replayability because you can choose what deck you want to play as. Now, we're of course going to bring our forward operating base, the only building in Wargame, and it allows for quick resupply and quick refueling of your resupply choppers. Now, in this case, we're going to go with the CH-47C Chinook instead of the HC-1. Now, the HC-1 is more numerous, but it carries less supplies. Here we get, well, actually I'm going to swap that. We're going to go for more numerous, because we get 6 of them as compared to only 4 of them. And then for supplies, now usually I would pick the Mankati. We get 6 of them with a lot of supplies in them. However, the Stalwart, in this case, actually makes a interesting case, because while it carries less supplies, it's also amphibious, which means that you don't have to go across that bridge that the enemy's camped out with APG and the tanks. You can go across the river, which they probably haven't defended as much, because, seriously, who does naval landings in this game? Or amphibious crossings. So it's very interesting. Both are good options. I would, I usually take them in Kadi 6x6, so that's what I'm going to take. This is what I think everybody needs in their logistics section. I wouldn't recommend doing less than this. You can do more, but it's not really necessary. Now, infantry. If you thought the Soviets were overwhelming, then get ready for coalitions, because you have tons of variety. I mean, compared to the special forces that you had with the Soviets, here we have 3 different varieties. Each are very distinct and provide their own purposes. Not to mention, we have so many more varieties of rifle infantry. It's easy to get overwhelmed, for sure. So let's make this easy. Let's start with our rifle infantry. We have a lot of options. I'm just going to say that up front. We have a lot of options. So, what do we choose? That's an important question right now. Well, what do we... Well, we can pick a cheaper light infantry, or we can go with heavy infantry, such as these commandos, or the paratroopers, or Canadian Airmen. We have a lot of options. Now, diggers are interesting, and here's one. They carry a squad automatic weapon. They are the only, I believe, the only infantry, like light infantry squad to carry a squad automatic weapon with CQC capability, meaning that they can shoot on the move and they have good accuracy. And they do carry the Mini-Me, which is basically just a very rapid fire. It's a lot like the US M249 SAW. In fact, I believe this inspired, if I remember that correct. So yeah. The commandos also have it. The Fusiliers are interesting, because while these guys can fire on the move, which is also cool. That's the other unique thing about the Fusiliers, but they aren't CQC. The great thing about the Fusiliers, though, is that they have the what's it called? They have the Law 80. And the Law 80 has very high accuracy, very high armor penetration, and you can shoot 20 rounds a minute. This is an incredible feature that the Fusiliers get, and you can back them up with, say, the Warrior 90, which can do a heck of a lot of damage if given the chance to. So, for our at least for our rifle infantry, like our normal infantry, I'm going to take the Fusilier 90. I'm going to take them in the Warrior 90 because it gets 6 frontal armor, which means that it is quite powerful. It's quite capable of defending the infantry that is indeed inside of it. So I'm going to take 6 of them, and they're also only 20 points, which is a nice feature. And they get a huge amount of armor upgrade. So well then again, slower, less autonomous, but we're going to go for the Warrior 90, just because it does give us so much more armor. The Warrior Milan, also interesting, because you get the Milan 2 ATGM on it, but it's not the most accurate, neither does it have the most range, so I'm just going to pick the normal Warrior 90. Next for our, I might want to look at our commandos for heavy infantry. I'm going to pull up, actually, a lot of units here. I'm going to pull up just a lot, like I said. So, primarily what I'm going to be looking at, some of these units down here, so the Spec Ops, the Commandos. I'm going to be looking at our heavy infantry in the form of the paratroopers. I'm going to look at the Gurkhas, and we're also going to look at the Commandos and the Canadian Airborne. Now, I want the SAS in here, but the role I want them to fill, I need is a heavy infantry unit. The SAS make great units for behind the lines, and they're excellent at being an all-round fighting force. Their M16 is very accurate and has a good rate of fire. Their AT-4 is good against tanks and vehicles with a high rate of fire, and its Stinger can kill enemy helicopters when they're not expecting infantry to carry both anti-tank capacity and as well as carrying your AA. The only other unit in the game to do this are the East German FJB and the LSDR-40s, also East German. So yeah, these are our options here. Now we also have the Royal Marine 90. Now the Royal Marine 90 are interesting because they carry that excellent Law 80 that our Fusiliers have, but you also have a much higher accuracy, and so they're much with the rifle, and they have a good Mini-Me. Then we also have the Gurkhas 90. These are very good. close-in fighting. They're also very good at, say, fighting in towns. They're also good at fighting in forests. They're good fighting basically anywhere except for open terrain, but let's face it, what infantry is good at doing that. SMG is both a blessing and a curse. It's very good at dealing in close. When you're very close to the enemy, you're going to wish you had a submachine gun. However, you're going to be engaged by enemies with battle rifles and assault rifles much sooner than you can engage them with your submachine gun. So, for say a heavy infantry option, oh, there's also the SASR. It's basically just special forces. They get an assault rifle. They get a law. But the neat thing about the Carl Gustav M3 is it has an 875 meter range. Not a lot of laws have that, and the M60E3 does a lot of suppression damage and has a very low range for being a squad automatic weapon. So yeah, like I said, lots of options, and this is why doing a Commonwealth deck is difficult, especially for me. So look at all these units. Now, because the let's see, how many more do we get? We get 4 more paratroopers compared to the Royal Marines. And comparing that to the 90s even. Yeah, so let's just compare our Royal Marines to the paratroopers. Royal Marines, hands down, have a better, do better with their assault rifle because of their elite training. Or they have the same stats on their mini-me. They have the same stats on the Law 80. Basically paying 10 points more for the increased accuracy with the L85, which is significant. Oh, increased rate of fire as well, and increased speed. But we get 4 less, which is the deciding factor, I believe. So, very hard choices. Wargame makes you make the hard choices as a commander. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put in the Royal Marines. Now, if you find you're not getting enough infantry, then you can switch to the paratroopers. By all means, switch to the paratroopers, because they're not a bad option. I guess you could say you could find something in between if you wanted the Gurkhas. Like, if you're taking the Gurkhas... Actually, we're going to take the... No, because of the SMG. They're not an all-round enough unit for me. They're very good, but I think the Royal Marines can do the job just a bit better. Next, we're also, well, what other units can we take? Well, we have anti-aircraft, anti-tank, engineer, fire support, which we haven't talked about yet, and reserve, which we also haven't talked about yet. First off, anti-aircraft. The one unit that you should never, ever, ever take, and I want all of my viewers to basically take a solemn oath that we are never going to use the blowpipe. Just please don't be that guy who deploys the blowpipe. You might be wondering, well, what's so bad about the blowpipe? Well, it has 20% accuracy, and you're like, well, there are other units that have worse accuracy, and I'd be like, yeah, and I usually don't take those. It has terrible range against helicopters, even the Red Eye has better range, and the worst part is that not only does it have these critical stats, but it's also guided. And by being guided, it effectively makes it terrible. Because you still have to look at it and watch the target and watch the target. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to miss no matter what, which is bound to happen anyway with this 20% accuracy. Personally, I like the Javelin. The Javelin has 2450 meter range. It has high HE power. And while it's still guided, which I don't like, it does have better accuracy. The other option is the RBS 70, which is what I'm going to take. It's very similar, and by very similar, I mean it is very, very similar to the Javelin, in that it has the same accuracy. It has lower HE and suppression damage, but has a higher range, and that's why I'm going to take the RBS 70 in this case. I'm going to take 8 of them at trained, and we're going to take them in a Stolly. Well, actually, we're going to take them in the M113 3050. So we have a lot of these guys coming in tracked. So we're going to bring them in that way. ATGMs, if you want ATGMs, you can take them. Here are fire support units. We haven't talked about fire support units. Fire support units are interesting and they're unique in that they usually carry a law that fires faster than a normal law. They carry more missiles than a normal 10-man squad would. and they also have HE power, which has very high suppression damage. So, taking the Carl Gustav M2 with in the form of the Imra isn't a bad option. Even in town fighting, these can be devastating. Especially in town fighting, these can be devastating, I should say. And then we haven't talked about reservists. Reservists have, not to say a special place in my heart, but they do serve some purposes. Now, when in the United States, when we think of reservists, we might think of, say, the first thing that comes to my mind would be like the Army and the Marine Reserves. This is not quite that. This is more of a militia trained group. It's not so much like a ready to go on active duty at any time. These guys are more like a home guard or militia group that can be thrown in. They're bad units, basically. I'm not saying that the territorials themselves are bad. I mean, I'm just saying that reservists are usually militia home guard units. They're not usually the best. That being said, I think the best role that these guys have is in the form of, say, a flank defense, holding a town. Like, say you have a town behind your lines and you want to make sure that they don't take it, like they don't land some infantry behind you and take it. Then you can bring in, say, some territorials, you can put them there, and at least if you start seeing them, they'll be a bit of a tripwire, so they'll engage them, and you'll hear the when these start getting engaged, and you'll look over, and you'll be like, oh, my territorials are getting shot at by some Specialny Jernotki. Well, I better send in some units to go kill them. So that's, and then the territorials tie them up until that arrives. So that's basically the role of reservists. If you like reservists, I don't care. But I'm not going to be taking them in this deck because sometimes people will just spam them. The final unit, I did say I was going to take this, and I do intend to take it indeed, is going to be these SAS. Now we can take more. We take them. How much is the Puma cost? Puma, but it has less speed. We're going to take them in the AH1 so we can get the best speed out of them. Now, I'm going to hold it here. Now, this isn't a lot of infantry. I'm going to actually look at our rifle infantry, see if we have a more numerous... Yeah, we do. We can take some Canadian Airborne. If you want to flesh out your deck and just add some extra units to your deck, you could say add some normal Fusiliers, like these guys. It's just an option. I'm mentioning it. The M72 isn't much, but it still works. It still operates. It's still fine. It's still fine, so, you know, you could do that. It's acceptable. And once again, paratroopers, you know, you have a ton of options. 40 units, though, it's probably a bit on the low side, actually. You get 12 commandos. How many? 12 Canadian Airbornes. Hard choices. Hard choices. I'm going to leave it like this for now. I'm probably going to go in and I'm going to add another rifleman group later, like another rifle squad. Next, we have our support section. Now, the biggest thing that this coalition is lacking in is long-range anti-aircraft. The best range that you get is with the tracked Rapier, and that's 3,000, not 38,000. Wow, that was really embellishing this. No, it will shoot at 3,850 meter range, which is acceptable. It's not bad, and it carries a lot of missiles, and it's good for the price, but it's not like 44,500 or say a Patriot at 4,500. So yeah, it's not as good in that regard, but that doesn't mean that it is bad. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take these tracked Rapiers. Now, the cool thing that you get when you play as the Commonwealth, no other country has this to my knowledge, are these multi-purpose missiles, or dual-purpose missiles, such as the Stormer and the Starstreak. Now, I want to go with the Stormer. Now, the ADATS is great, but I only get 4. I want 6, because I like these guys. Now, both of these are great units. They're very expensive, but remember, especially like for the ADATS, this thing can kill a tank, and you know, with a couple missiles, and then it can look up to the sky and kill the helicopter that's going after it. So, it's pretty lethal. And by pretty, I mean it's very, very lethal. So just keep that in mind when you're engaging units like it. And then finally, for some longer range missile AA, I'm going to add base track repair. Actually, I'm going to go for air defense gun. Yeah, and for that, I'm going to go with the Centurion Marksman. We get a 2,800 meter range against helicopters, 26 against airplanes. It has a stabilizer, and just keep it to the roads, and you'll be fine. You won't have to worry about this, the off-road speed, which isn't much to look at on any of them. Honestly, it's not. And then for our mortars, we don't get a lot of options here. We basically get 3 of the same thing, and then 1 that brings it in a wheeled platform. And because all of these mortars are, let's face it, they're the exact same thing, basically, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take the Bison 81 millimeters because they can just move faster. Tanks. Now, we have some stark differences here between the nations. Let's take Canada, for example. Canada doesn't really have a main battle tank. The closest thing you could call, and by main battle tank, I mean something that, like, I guess you could call this a main battle tank. Excuse me, Canada. This is a Leopard C2 Mexus, or this is the Leopard C2 Mexus. It's a very effective tank. I really like this tank. But it only has 14 frontal armor, which makes me wonder, is this really a frontline tank? To which my answer would be, it can be if used properly. But that's kind of the limitation of playing just him. Meanwhile, keep in mind, 17 armor penetration and 14 frontal armor. Keep that in mind. Next, we're going to look at our, the UK. Now, let's take the Challenger Mark 1, for instance. It is a lot more expensive. 19 frontal armor, 10 side armor. 10 side armor, just for reference, is exactly what the T-90 has. Wow. However, the armor penetration is not as good. You couldn't penetrate the frontal armor of this tank with the main gun of the Challenger Mark 1. Now, just to, right now, the first unit I'm going to take in this deck, seems odd, but we're going to take the Scorpion 90. Scorpion 90 makes a very effective support unit because of its AP power and its accuracy. It has 55% accuracy on a 30-point unit. It's just very effective at support, whereas, say, the Scorpion light tank, you're probably looking, they all look the same, the gun's just a little bigger, but this gun is heat on the 20-point, the 30-point is kinetic. Great time to explain what kinetic is. Well, basically, if you shoot a target from an inch away or shooting it from a foot away, shooting it from an inch away is going to be more accurate and it's going to do more damage. That's basically what the kinetic does. It's going to do more damage the closer it is. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the Scorpion 90. That's going to be our first unit in the game. Please, do not take these Centurion Mark 5s. I don't know why people take them. The only time I've taken these in a deck, just to point them out, is in Denmark. And that's basically because there are no other options after you take all of your Leopard 2s. So, next, we're going to go to Canada, and we're going to add the Mexus. It's a great all-around unit. It can deal damage. It can take some damage, maybe embellishing it a little bit there. Next, we're going to take the Challenger 1 Mark 1. You could go for the 1 Mark 2, but you only get 4 of them. And personally, I feel like you should get more of these. I feel that way because you get 7 M1 Abrams, but you only get 4 Challenger 1 Mark 1s. Really? I don't get the logic there. The logic is just a bit of a disconnect for me. Then, finally, we have the Challenger, not the Challenger Mark 2, but the Challenger 2. Now, the thing about British tanks is that they are tanks. Now, you're probably looking at your computer screen like, what do you mean they're tanks? Well, I mean, they're all tanks. See, look in the corner, it says tanks. Are you blind? Well, no, first off, I'm not blind. But, what we're looking at here with the Challenger 2 is it has very, very, very heavy armor. The British tanks are the hardest tanks for anything to penetrate. They have the most armor on them for any tank in their class. Just look at this. Only tank with 23 frontal armor. Has 11 side armor. I mean, this could take some of the lower level ATGMs to the side, still live, and kill the ATGMs because they just messed with the wrong tank. 6 armor in the back. That's unheard of. That is just unheard of on most tanks. And 4 top armor, which means it can sustain a bit of fire if it has to. The drawback of the Challenger 2, and some of you are going to be tilting your heads like, there's a drawback to this? Well, like any tank, there's a drawback. That drawback in this case, well, it's the AP power. It's only 22 AP power. Usually for tanks like super heavies, they usually have 23 frontal armor. Once again, could not go through its own frontal armor, which is a big deal. This is going to be basically dead even with 1890 in that case, just because they'll both end up being in range where they could penetrate each other at the same time. So yeah, look at it that way. Personally, the Challenger 2 is a great tank. I think it is. But make sure you use it properly. It's not the most mobile. It's not necessarily doesn't necessarily have the best gun. That title goes to the M1A2, by the way. Go USA. But it's a good platform. It's a good tank. It is very survivable when utilized properly. I cannot emphasize that point enough. When used properly, all. Now, we're going to look at Recon. Now, Recon, we have quite a number of options, actually. The first units I'm going to take, we're going to look at a helicopter. Now, when we look at our Recon helicopters, we have basically 2 options. You can choose the Gazelle AH-1, very fast, exceptional optics, and 4 strength, or you can choose the AS-350 with 290 kph, the 6 strength, and very small size. Both of these have very small size. The difference are the optics and the strength. Because I think the AS, just because of the survivability of the AS-350, I'm going to go with that. Having that extra bit of strength, that extra bit of protection, is so important for recon helicopters. For example, let's say the Gazelle AH-1 gets hit by an Igla. The Igla N does 5 HE damage. It gets hit. This is going down in one shot. You lost 65 points. Excuse me. However, the AS-350 gets hit by that very same missile. Say it gets hit by one missile. It will survive, albeit with 1 point of health. But it will survive nonetheless. So I'm going to pick that, just because of its survivability. Next, Recon Infantry, and I'm also going to add Special Forces. Now, once again, a lot of options. Just since we're doing a coalition deck, there are exponentially more options. Now, once again, if you want passive spotters, take the sniper teams. Just like the Spetsnaz VMF, they have these same stats, except they're shock, not elite. The very interesting thing that the Recce have, though, is 1 AP power. That's right, this is a 50 caliber sniper rifle that can penetrate the armor of vehicles. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because there are only select situations where it would even make sense to do that, but it's still possible to do that. Then we have the NZSAS, as well as, if it'll pull up here, the SBS. They share the exact same SMG. That's where the similarities end. You either get the Carl Gustav M2, which I would prefer, versus the M72. The M72, well, M72 has worse accuracy, worse AP power, and worse ground range, but it fires faster, while the Gustav M2 has less rate of fire, but it's better in every other category. And then we compare the Shorty to the Bren. Once again, I think the Bren wins this. It's more accurate on the move. It has more, even better accuracy, just a little bit less rate of fire, and it has even better range. So I'm actually going to take some SBS, and we're going to use this, say, in conjunction with SAS. That's going to get really confusing. In case you're wondering, they're not SAS. SAS stands for Special Air Service, while the SBS stands for Special Boat Service. Simple, basically. Now, we're going to need an exceptional optics vehicle of some kind. And for that job, I'm going to go with either the Parenti, or the ASLEV S. Actually, I'm going to take neither of them. I'm going to take the Coyote. It's not exceptional optics, but it has very good optics, and it's quick. So I'm going to take this, and we're going to use this as, say, a recon unit. It's just as a recon unit that has 3 armor penetration on its autocannon. And then we're also going to take some Spartans, which can fill in the gaps, per se. Actually, we don't get a lot of those. Do we get more? Like, say if we were to take... Let's say we were to take... Oh, yeah, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 8 Norforce. Norforce is a 5-man recon team, very similar to the Resvedkas. However, we get 8 of them, and in that regard, we can use them as passive spotters that are even stealthier. So that's what we're going to do. If there's 24 units of recon, we're going to move to vehicles. Add this to your deck immediately. This is the Centurion Avery. The Centurion Avery is very good at killing off infantry. His HE power, and will mess up infantry squads. Very high ground range, very high ground damage. Rate of fire could be a bit better, and by a bit better, I mean it could be a lot better. It's slow, has poor optics, it's big, but it does a lot of damage when it hits. It makes a good defensive unit and a good support unit. Next, we need some better AT power. For that, we're going to take the ASLEV TOW2. And then, finally, as a defensive unit, we're going to take the Chimera, and we're going to use this just to hold down sectors. That's what this is good for. Actually, no, we're not going to take that. We're going to take the Vickers Mark 11, because it's very mobile, very effective, and very lethal at that. And for 45 points, who can say no to a Vickers? I can't. For our helicopters, we're going to take the Lynx AH-7 TOW2. You get 8 TOW2 missiles, each carrying each has 25 armor penetration, and it has a 50% stabilizer, meaning you can strafe on the move. You can have this on the move, fire, and you can hit the target. Very, very good capability to have. And then for our support, we're going to bring in the Bushranger. Now, the Bushranger has heat missiles. Now, you're probably wondering, what's the meaning of that? Well, heat missiles will always do 1 point of damage. You can kill super heavies with a Bushranger if you just get a couple of these together, say only... If 10 of them hit, and all 10 of them do 1 point of damage, you've just killed yourself a T-72BU. Simple as that. And finally, we're going to do our aircraft. I'm actually going to go just forgo naval this time. Now, first we're going to look at our air superiority fighters. Now, we're going to basically be choosing here between the Tornado F2 or the Tornado F3. I, personally, am going to go for the Tornado F2 just because I can get them at Elite. And getting them at Elite will make them more effective, more dangerous, and while I can get 2 of these guys at Trained, they only come in at Trained. And so this can be kind of made up for, if you will, by taking them at Elite. Now for a strike bomber. Oh boy. Fun. You know, this is the explosion delivery system. This is the all-in-one, clear your town for you bomber. 10 ECM isn't great, and it doesn't have as much strength as, say, a B5, but who needs that when you carry 8 1,000 kilogram bombs that do 20 HE damage apiece? So yeah, there's that to it as well. However, we're gonna need some seed to escort it in, or else it's just going to die, and you're gonna get sad because you just lost the F-111C, so we're gonna take the Sea Harrier. And then finally, as a precision strike, if you even want to call it that, Well, actually, we need a tank sniper. That's where we're going to take the Kehu. I had a game where I just trolled people with a Kehu. Well, that wasn't all I did. I was fighting on the lines. But I just used a Kehu here and blew up so many tanks using the Kehu. Probably got up to hardened or something. It was epic using this Kehu. The Kehu is basically a Skyhawk. It's slow, so keep that in mind. It is very slow at 600 kilometers an hour, but it does have 30% ECM, and it has good time over target. Now, we need more infantry, so I'm going to get rid of these Royal Marines. Instead, how many Highlanders can we get? Oh, take 16 Highlanders, or we took them in what if we took them in the CH-147? Yeah, we're going to take 16 Highlanders in this position, and that is going to give us our deck. Now, I do have the chance to add another unit. Now, we already have our, anti-infantry, we have an all-around unit which can kill tanks, it can kill infantry. I didn't really elaborate this, I just added it, so I'll do that now. We have the Bushmaster autocannon, does 3 armor penetration power. Very good. This just is a very good all-around unit. You have the Totu, has very high armor penetration, as always. And then you have an M240, which is good for, of course, killing off your enemy, let's say your enemy infantry if they get too close, but they shouldn't get that close because you have the autocannon. However, we have basically everything we need here. Helicopters aren't much to look at, though. Now, the one thing I guess I will take, I'm going to take, go ahead and take 8 AH-1, no, we're going to take 6 of them. I'm going to take a couple of these AH-1 Totus, we're going to use them on lesser targets. Targets that I'm not as concerned about. That way, what you can get with the AH-1 Totu, I can be able to take out cheaper units like transports and stuff that I need to kill, but I don't want to do with a Totu, because sometimes there's overkill, and usually overkill will cost you more supplies, and if you're in a long game, that could be an issue. If you wanted another option, you could take some more armor and take the Chimera. Choice is yours. Infantry, if you really feel like you need more infantry, then you can make yourself some room. You can make yourself room. But that's what you get when you take a Commonwealth or a Coalition deck, is you can't take everything that you might want. So yeah. So this has been a good deck review, I think. I hope this helps you guys out when you're making your decks, when you're out in the battlefield yourself, seeing how you use these, how I use them anyways. And this has been RC0538. I'm going to sign off. Please like and subscribe if you like this content, and let me know if this was helpful to you in the comments below. Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.